Hi everyone, I'm Mindy Dreyer.
And I'm Joe Schmitz with Peak Retirement Planning.
You know, for most of us, the most important thing we can do is protect ourselves, protect our family, our loved ones. But you know what else is really important? Protecting our wealth. And Joe, you've written another book now, basically geared toward just that, protecting our wealth.
Yeah, and really the book was created to review our process that we go through with our clients that we work with. And so we call it a 5-pillar process, and it's what we cover in the book. And what I really wanted to do with this book is write it in a way that someone could hop on an airplane and they could understand what are the things they need to have in place as a either near retirement or are in retirement to really be set up for success as they enter that phase of their life. Because you probably get it all the time, and it's like people always wonder, am I going to be okay?
Oh, I think that's the biggest question and concern, especially these days. You can't help but wonder about and worry about your money.
Exactly, and when you get to retirement, things have changed, especially nowadays, because people are living so much longer. You know, there's a lot more, inflation's a bigger concern right now, and there's no longer pensions for most people. 20% of people have a pension. Other than that, you know, they're forced to plan for their retirement themselves.
Why do you think that changed?
Obviously, companies don't want to provide that amount of income for so many years, right? Because that's what a pension is, and so that's why they ultimately wanted to make that change, is because they couldn't do it anymore. They couldn't make it work, and that's why you're seeing a lot of companies, you know, change that.
We want people to get this book so you can read for it yourself, but you mentioned the 5 pillars. Can you briefly mention and talk about what they are?
So I'll give an overview of the 5 pillars.
Okay.
So we've got tax planning is what we consider the biggest pillar of it all. You know, we consider that the foundation of retirement planning, because for those who have been diligent savers who we typically work with, when you take out money from your investments in retirement, typically you're going to have to pay taxes. And so when you've saved all this money into your 401ks and your IRAs, you've got a huge tax burden on their hands. And so typically we're helping people with tax planning on that so they pay less taxes over their retirement. And what we see, and that's why we see tax planning as the biggest pillar of them all, is because all the other 4 pillars play off of taxes. And that's where our focus is really foundational in the tax planning. You know, a lot of advisors don't talk about tax planning. You know, most advisors just do investment management. They don't really focus on the full picture. They don't have the CFP and the CPA and the estate planning attorney all in one place. They really just focus on one of these pillars. And so they may be getting 20% of a plan when really they could be getting, you know, 100% with all 5. And that's really what the book's all about, is to educate people of, hey, here's the things you need to be looking out for. Because how many people know how to plan a retirement, right? How many retirements do people plan? You know, maybe one, unless they are in this industry. And so that's why it's so important, because 1, 2, 3 mistakes can be so costly, right? And so that's the tax planning one of why it's so important. But then the other 4 are healthcare planning, investment planning, income planning, and then also estate planning. And so we help our clients put together a plan that plays off all of those. And so if you think about it, you know, you look at income planning, well, it's not how much money you take out of your investments, it's how much do you keep, right? And so if you get a 10% rate of return in your investment plan, well, if you've got to pay taxes, maybe your actual rate of return is only 7%. So you can see how taxes plays a part in all of those, but those are some of the ways that we help them with that. And then also healthcare, you know, what about long-term care? You know, $50,000 to $100,000 a year could be the cost of something like that. So being able to help people with that. And another big one for people is estate planning, right? And with estate planning, you can either get documents or you can have an estate plan. And we always tell everyone, you need estate planning documents. It's so important. But that's only one part of an estate plan. We need to know, how are we going to get Uncle Sam out of being a beneficiary in our accounts? We need to make sure that the kids get as much of that wealth as possible.
I think that's the big picture. You know, me as a parent, I want to be able to enjoy my money and in our retirement phases, but I really want to be able to leave my son and my daughter with excess amount of money. That's really important, I think, to most Americans. But is it harder to do these days?
It is, and another reason why a lot of people do like working with us, and they say it all the time, is because of that generational planning that you're mentioning. And it's something we cover in the book, is that when you're looking for a team to trust with your life savings, what is important to you? First, start with that to determine who's going to be the best fit. And we always tell people, like, we may not be the best fit to help you, but we need to explore and see what are your goals and what are you trying to achieve. But some clients come to us that are more family oriented, and they want to ensure that their wealth is transferred in that estate planning pillar and that tax planning pillar to their loved ones without any concern, right? And we have a setup here where we enjoy working with not only the parents, but also the kids and maybe even the grandkids eventually. And so we found a lot of people find that success because average age of an advisor is 56. So they may not be around for forever.
Right.
But that's something we really much value of having those long-term relationships, to see them not only to retirement but through retirement as well.
You mentioned the 5 pillars and the 5 different areas. For most of us, it can seem confusing. You don't even know where to begin. And I think that's the beauty of working with you and your team, is because you simplify it and you break it down to make it make sense.
Exactly, and that's why we created this 5-pillar process, is because before we created the 5-pillar process, we were doing all the financial planning requirements, right? The CFP is called the Certified Financial Planner designation. In my opinion, it's a gold star of the industry, and basically that consists of the 5 pillars that we do planning for. So we were doing that. I have had my CFP for a while now, but it was hard for the client to feel that, right? They didn't know. Like, most people just don't understand financial planning as well as maybe an expert. And so we really wanted to make this visual and show them, here's our process that we do with our clients to ensure we don't miss anything, right? We work with people who are in similar situations. We work with people who are in or near retirement, 55 to 70, diligent savers. They're frugal, right? We call them the Midwestern millionaire, right, which is where my other book, came from. And it's about people with good values, good morals, who want to make a big difference. Everyone's situation is different. Everyone has specific situations. Everyone has more unique opportunities. But when we specialize in that crowd, we're becoming experts in that crowd of retirement planning. We know everything about Social Security, Medicare, tax planning and retirement. There's all the different things that you have to focus on at that point. We've seen so many times, and that's why our process is designed that way. And we can really dive deep into each of those pillars.
You mentioned your other book, I Hate Taxes. You became a best-selling author because of it. This one's thin, it's an easy read, but what's different in this book compared to your other one?
Yeah, great question. So the other one, and if someone's here saying, I want to learn more about taxes and that's my main focus, that other book's going to be the best book for them. And I wrote that book also in a very easy to understand way, so that a 4th grader could read it, is kind of what I always say.
So I could get it. I could actually understand.
Yeah. But so that's how that book was written. And this one basically takes that tax planning and talks about it here and ties it into the whole financial plan. The tax planning one is basically just, here's all the strategies and stuff, but it doesn't go into, how do we build this with all the other pillars playing a part into it. So this is more of an overview, I'll say. Tax planning is more of the really specific, right? We're really diving into all the different tax planning strategies out there for someone who's in or near retirement.
So the most important thing that you want someone to get out of this book after they read it, from beginning to end, is what?
To have a plan. To really, even more than that, is to find a team that they can trust to make sure that they're not missing anything. And, we always say, whether that's with us or someone else, this is your life savings. You really have to ask yourself, maybe they are a DIYer, as we call them, a do-it-yourselfer, and they want to do all the planning on their own. And they may be doing great. They maybe really know their stuff. Maybe it's a hobby for them, but are they missing anything? Do they really go as deep as they need to on tax planning? If they pass away, is their spouse going to be good to go? Is their spouse 100% as confident as they are in the type of planning they're doing? And so we see a lot of people in those scenarios who come to us and say, hey, it's time for us to delegate and get the help we need from the experts. So that's that. And then also, if someone already has an advisor, our biggest hope is just ensure that they're doing the type of planning that is talked about in the book. Make sure they're going 5 pillars deep, because we just see a lot of advisors don't, and they may call themselves financial advisors, but maybe they're just a broker or maybe just an insurance salesperson, and our industry can really be watered down in those aspects. So that's why we recommend working with a professional team, not just an individual, that can do all of this in one place. And I think that's why we've grown so much, is because of that collaboration. People really like having a one-stop shop. Have their estate planner in the meetings with their financial planner, having the CPA communicate directly with the financial planner, having all 3 of those professionals work together to have that plan in place. I mean, there's no miscommunication at that point. I mean, we've sent, before we had the attorney here, we sent people across town to get documents, and they'd end up paying way more than what they should have. They ended up with documents they shouldn't have gotten, and same deal with the CPA. I mean, they're overpaying for pretty simple, basically just filing their taxes. They weren't doing tax planning, they're just filing the taxes. And that's something that we wanted to build all in one place, so there's just no miscommunication.
Oh, I think it makes it so much easier for people and so much better when everybody is all under the same roof. You mentioned trust several times in this. How do you convince people that you can be trusted? I've known you for years.
Yeah.
We trust you. Our family trusts Peak Retirement. But how do you convince complete strangers that this is where you want to be?
Yeah, and it's the toughest thing in the world. And I'll tell you that, when you trust someone with their life savings, it's a huge decision.
Yeah.
And we always tell someone, you're not going to trust me, like your point, within meeting with us 1 or 2 times. But we tell them is, if you have a gut feeling and this is the type of planning you're looking for, the best thing we can do is to try to take a step. And we tell our clients, and actually our clients tell us this, that it typically takes them 6 months to feel comfortable with this arrangement, this relationship. And that's just not with us, but other advisors, what they tell us too, because that's the amount of time it takes to really see all 5 pillars really implemented. And so we tell them that, hey, we don't charge any upfront fees to work with us. If you're not happy at any point during your agreement, you can terminate our relationship at any time. We would never, hold someone hostage here or tell them to force them to work with us. It's just not who we are. And we even joke with them too that, hey, we can terminate the agreement too if we want to. So that just ensures it's going to be a good relationship, because I joke about that, but we are also very particular about who we bring on to work with.
I'm sure, you have to be.
Because when we go as deep as we do with the clients we work with, we want them to be great relationships. We're not trying to sit here and work with everyone. We're not sitting here trying to be the biggest firm in the country. We want to be the best, and if we can grow in the right way, then we're going to do that. But we do have, people reach out to us that we just simply can't serve. But we'll always make sure we can give people guidance and get them to the, set up for success, and point them to the right direction. But trust is a big thing, and I'd say it's hard to really know that if you don't know this world very well. But it's a feel thing for a lot of people. Just understanding who they're working with, the level of excellence they have, I think is what a lot of people see with us of why they make that decision. But we would never, force anyone. We always want to make sure we can hear what questions they have and make them feel comfortable that this is going to be the right fit for them.
Well, we want this to be another bestseller for you. So where can people get their own individual copy?
Yeah, so they can actually just request it on our website here. And if you're watching this video on our website, just right below here, you can click and you can request a copy, and we'll send that out to them.
Sounds good. Thanks, Joe. And thanks for watching, everyone.